Welcome, weary travelers of the modern world. Tonight, we invite you to set aside the rushing currents of contemporary life and drift back through the mists of time to a world both simpler and more profound than our own. Close your eyes and let your breathing slow as we transport you over 1,000 years into the past, to the year 950 CE, along the pristine fjords of western Norway. Here, where crystalline waters reflect towering mountains cloaked in ancient forests, we will spend an entire day in the company of Bjorn Eriksson, a Viking farmer and occasional seafarer. This is not the Hollywood vision of horned helmets and constant warfare, but the authentic daily existence of the Norse people as revealed through decades of archaeological excavation and scholarly research into primary sources like the Icelandic sagas, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, and countless artifacts recovered from sites across Scandinavia. Bjorn lives in a small farming settlement of perhaps 30 families, nestled in a protected valley where a clear river meets the fjord. His world operates according to rhythms as old as humanity itself, the turning of seasons, the cycle of planting and harvest, the eternal dance between land and sea that has sustained his people for countless generations. Archaeological evidence from sites like Borg in the Lofoten Islands and the remarkable preservation at Oseberg have given us intimate glimpses into exactly how these communities functioned, from the construction of their longhouses to the foods they ate and the tools they used daily. As we begin our journey, imagine the profound quiet of a world without engines or electricity, where the loudest sounds are whined through pine boughs, the distant cry of seabirds, and the gentle lapping of waves against wooden hulls. Feel the crisp mountain air filling your lungs, carrying scents of wood smoke, pine resin, and the clean saltiness of northern seas. Let these sensations ground you as we step into Bjorn's peaceful world, where time moves with the measured pace of natural cycles rather than digital clocks. Tonight, you are not merely an observer but a welcome guest in this ancient community, invisible but present, able to witness the simple grace of a life lived in harmony with both nature and neighbors. Allow yourself to sink deeper into relaxation as we begin this timeless journey, leaving behind all concerns of the present moment to experience the profound peace of a world where every task has meaning and every day follows patterns established by countless generations of ancestors. The first pale fingers of dawn creep across the Norwegian fjord like a gentle blessing, painting the snow-capped peaks in soft shades of rose and gold. In the depths of winter, this far north, daylight is precious beyond measure, but now in late summer, the dawn comes early and promises a full day of blessed light. The settlement rests in perfect stillness, 43 wooden buildings of various sizes scattered along the river's edge like seeds cast by some benevolent giant. Bjorn Eriksson stirs in his sleeping furs as the light filtering through the small window gradually brightens. At 35 winters old, he carries himself with the quiet confidence of a man who has found his place in the world. His weathered hands speak of countless hours working wood, rope, and soil, while his steady gray eyes reflect the wisdom that comes from understanding one's role in the larger tapestry of community and season. The longhouse around him represents generations of accumulated knowledge about surviving in this harsh but magnificent environment. Built from massive pine logs and measuring nearly 60 feet in length, it houses not just Bjorn's immediate family but also his elderly father Magnus, 2 unmarried brothers, and several servants. The structure itself is a marvel of practical engineering. The thick turf roof provides excellent insulation while remaining waterproof, and the slightly bowed walls are designed to shed the fierce winter winds that howl down from the mountains. Bjorn lies still for a few more precious moments, listening to the gentle sounds of his world awakening. From the attached byre comes the soft rustling of cattle shifting in their stalls and the quiet clucking of chickens beginning their daily search for insects and grain. His wife Astrid breathes peacefully beside him, her long auburn hair spread across the woolen pillow she embroidered with intricate knotwork patterns during the previous winter's long evenings. Even in sleep, one hand rests protectively over her slightly rounded belly. Their fourth child will arrive with the spring thaw. The three children already blessed to their household sleep on the raised platforms along the longhouse walls, each in their own carefully arranged space. Young Olaf, 8 winters old and already showing promise as a future sailor, clutches a small wooden ship he carved himself under his father's patient guidance. Their daughter Ingrid, 15 and blossoming into womanhood, has fallen asleep with her embroidery still in her hands. She's been working on a new apron decorated with protective runes and symbols of fertility. Little Sigrid, barely 5, sleeps curled like a kitten beneath furs that once belonged to her great-grandmother, a woman whose stories of the settlement's founding still warm winter evenings. Archaeological evidence from numerous Viking Age sites reveals that these seemingly simple homes contain sophisticated comfort features. Bjorn's family sleeps on thick mattresses stuffed with down and dried sweet grass, covered by woolen blankets dyed in rich colors using local plants and imported materials. The raised sleeping platforms not only provided comfort but also took advantage of the warmth that rose from the central hearth, while storage compartments built into the platform bases held precious possessions safe from moisture and pests. Bjorn rises with the practiced stealth of a man accustomed to early mornings, his movements fluid and silent. The wooden floor, worn smooth by generations of feet, makes no sound beneath his bare soles as he moves to the carved chest where he keeps his daily clothing. His garments reflect both practical necessity and understated prosperity. A long-sleeved woolen tunic dyed deep blue with woad, woolen trousers wrapped with leather leg bindings, and a leather belt from which hang his eating knife and a small pouch containing fire-starting materials. The belt itself tells a story of craftsmanship and cultural connection. Made from leather tanned using oak bark according to techniques passed down through generations, it's decorated with bronze fittings cast in patterns that echo the great art styles found on the Oseberg ship and other masterworks of Viking Age artisans. The knife's handle is carved from antler and inlaid with thin strips of silver, making it both functional tool and status symbol. As Bjorn dresses, he glances toward the central hearth where last night's fire has burned down to glowing coals buried in white ash. Maintaining this fire through the night was crucial, not just for warmth, but because rekindling required precious time and resources. The carefully banked coals will spring back to life when fed fresh kindling and gently blown, providing the heat needed for cooking and the psychological comfort that comes from humanity's oldest technology. Moving to the carved wooden door, Bjorn lifts the heavy iron latch, itself a valuable piece of metalwork that represents significant investment. Iron was precious in the Viking world, requiring both skilled smiths and reliable trade networks to obtain the raw materials. Every piece of worked iron in the household, from hinges and latches to knives and tools, represented hours of specialized labor and substantial economic value. The door opens silently on leather hinges treated with sheep's fat to prevent creaking. Bjorn steps into the crisp morning air, his breath forming small clouds in the chill. The settlement spreads before him in the growing light, other longhouses of various sizes, storage buildings, workshops, and the carefully tended fields that represent the community's primary source of sustenance. Thin columns of smoke rise from several chimneys, indicating that other early risers are beginning their daily routines. The air carries a symphony of subtle sounds and scents that speak of a world in perfect balance with natural rhythms. Pine forests whisper in the gentle breeze, their resinous scent mixing with wood smoke and the distant salt tang of the fjord. Birds call from the forest edges, ravens whose intelligence was sacred to Odin, hawks circling high on thermal currents, and smaller songbirds whose melodies provide a cheerful soundtrack to the morning's activities. Bjorn walks the well-worn path to the community well, his leather boots making soft impressions in earth still damp with dew. The path itself represents countless journeys by settlement members over many years, worn into the landscape by the simple repetition of daily necessity. Along the way, he passes vegetable gardens where cabbages, onions, and turnips grow in neat rows, tended with the careful attention that means survival through the coming winter. The well stands at the physical and social center of the settlement, a carefully constructed ring of fitted stones surrounding a shaft that reaches down to the pure groundwater fed by mountain springs. Archaeological excavations have revealed similar wells at Viking Age sites across Scandinavia, often elaborately constructed and maintained as community resources essential for survival. This particular well has served the settlement for over 50 years, its water always running clear and cold even in the driest summers. Other settlement members are beginning to appear, each following their own morning routines but all part of the larger community rhythm. Gunnar the blacksmith emerges from his workshop, already checking the coals in his forge and planning the day's metalwork. Helga, widow of the former chieftain, makes her stately way toward the well carrying an elaborately carved wooden bucket that marks her status within the community. Young Eric, barely 16 but already showing the broad shoulders of a future warrior, exercises with wooden practice weapons in the open area near his family's longhouse. These casual encounters form the social fabric that holds the community together. Greetings are exchanged with nods and brief words, but volumes of information pass in these simple interactions. Bjorn notes that Gunnar walks with a slight limp, perhaps yesterday's work at the forge was particularly strenuous, or maybe the old wound from his raiding days is troubling him again. Helga's elaborate dress suggests she's preparing for some special occasion, possibly the blessing ceremony for young Thorstein's new fishing boat. Eric's determined practice indicates his eagerness to prove himself worthy of joining next summer's trading expedition to the Orkneys. Returning to the longhouse with fresh water, Bjorn finds the household beginning its gentle transition into full wakefulness. Astrid has risen and is stirring the carefully banked coals back to flame, her movements graceful despite her pregnancy. She wears a long woolen dress dyed soft green with bog iron, the color speaking of both prosperity and good taste. Over this, she's wrapped a woolen shawl secured at her shoulders with her grandmother's bronze brooches, magnificent oval pieces decorated with intricate animal interlace patterns that mark her status as a married woman of good family. These brooches represent far more than mere decoration. Archaeological finds across the Viking world have revealed thousands of such pieces, each one a masterwork of bronze casting and artistic vision. The patterns worked into their surfaces carry deep cultural meaning, intertwined animals representing the interconnectedness of all life, runes invoking protection and prosperity, geometric designs that echo the cosmic order described in Norse mythology. For a woman like Astrid, wearing her inherited brooches connects her to generations of ancestral mothers while proclaiming her family's continuity and stability. "Good morning, my heart," she says softly as Bjorn enters, using the ancient endearment that has passed between countless Viking couples across the centuries. Her voice carries the warmth of genuine affection tempered by the emotional restraint valued in their culture. Vikings expressed love through actions and subtle gestures rather than elaborate declarations, believing that true feeling ran too deep for casual display. The children are beginning to stir on their sleeping platforms, emerging from dreams with the gradual awareness that comes naturally when life follows daylight rhythms rather than artificial schedules. Young Olaf sits up first, his tousled brown hair sticking up at odd angles as he rubs sleep from bright blue eyes inherited from his father's line. Even at 8, he shows the quick intelligence and practical nature that will serve him well in a world where survival depends on learning essential skills early and well. Ingrid wakes more slowly, stretching like a cat in her warm furs before beginning the careful process of arranging her long blonde hair in the complex braids appropriate for an unmarried woman of her age and status. At 15, she stands on the threshold between childhood and full adult responsibility, already skilled in all the domestic arts while beginning to attract notice from young men in neighboring settlements. Her parents watched this development with mixed feelings, pride in her accomplishments and beauty balanced by the natural reluctance to see their daughter leave the family hearth for marriage and her own household. Little Sigrid remains deeply asleep, curled into a tight ball beneath her furs with one thumb in her mouth. At 5, she still enjoys the complete security of early childhood, though she's already begun learning simple tasks appropriate to her age and gender. Soon she'll begin serious training in spinning, weaving, cooking, and the other skills that will make her a valuable wife and household manager in years to come. Astrid moves efficiently around the central hearth area, her pregnant body showing no signs of the morning sickness that often troubles expectant mothers. This pregnancy, her 4th, proceeds smoothly, suggesting both good health and the blessing of the fertility goddesses honored by Norse women. She feeds carefully hoarded dry kindling to the coals, blowing gently until flames spring up to lick around the iron cooking pot suspended on its chain above the fire. The pot itself represents significant investment and skilled craftsmanship. Iron cooking vessels were valuable possessions in the Viking world, often passed down through generations and sometimes buried with their owners as grave goods. This particular pot, large enough to feed the entire household, was crafted by Gunnar's predecessor and has served Bjorn's family faithfully for over 20 years. Its bottom shows the characteristic wear patterns of countless meals, while its iron surface has developed the natural non-stick patina that comes from proper use and care. Into the pot goes water from the well, followed by carefully measured portions of barley and oats stored in sealed wooden containers that protect the grain from moisture and pests. These grains represent the foundation of Viking nutrition, hearty cereals that could be grown in northern climates and stored through long winters when fresh food became scarce. Archaeological analysis of preserved Viking-age meals has revealed that porridge and gruel made from various grains provided the bulk of daily calories for most people, supplemented by dairy products, preserved meats, and seasonal fruits and vegetables. As the porridge begins to cook, filling the longhouse with rich, comforting aromas, Astrid adds precious ingredients that transform the simple meal into something special. A spoonful of honey, traded from beekeepers farther south, provides sweetness while demonstrating the family's ability to afford luxury items. Dried berries preserved from last autumn's harvest add color and tartness that complement the honey's sweetness. A handful of hazelnuts, gathered from the forest and carefully shelled during winter evenings, contribute protein and the satisfying crunch that makes eating a pleasure rather than mere sustenance. Bjorn settles onto one of the wooden stools arranged around the hearth, accepting a wooden cup of fresh milk from Astrid with a smile of appreciation. The milk comes from their own cows, animals carefully bred and maintained as sources of dairy products that form a crucial part of the family's nutrition. Viking Age skeletal remains show evidence of the strong bones and teeth that come from adequate calcium intake, suggesting that dairy products played an important role in maintaining health in challenging northern environments. Young Olaf finally abandons his sleeping furs and approaches the fire, drawn by the warmth and the promising smells of breakfast preparation. He settles beside his father, unconsciously mimicking Bjorn's posture and alert attention to the day's emerging possibilities. At 8, Olaf is old enough to understand his role as eldest son and heir to the family's property and reputation, though he still has many years of learning before he'll be ready to assume full adult responsibilities. "Father," Olaf asks, his voice still thick with sleep, "will you teach me more about reading the wind today? Stormrider said yesterday that a man who cannot tell weather from sky signs will never be a true sailor." Stormrider is Bjorn's brother Thorvald, who earned his nickname during a memorable voyage to Ireland when his ability to interpret atmospheric conditions saved his ship from a violent gale that destroyed 2 other vessels in their small fleet. Bjorn nods approvingly at his son's question, pleased to see the boy's eagerness to learn practical skills. "Weather wisdom comes from patient observation," he replies, his voice carrying the same instructional tone his own father used decades ago. "Today we will watch clouds and wind together, and I will teach you what my grandfather taught me about reading the sky's moods." This exchange illustrates the continuity of knowledge transmission that allowed Viking culture to thrive across centuries and vast distances. Essential skills like navigation, weather prediction, and seamanship passed from father to son through patient instruction and hands-on experience, creating a body of practical wisdom that enabled Norse explorers to reach Iceland, Greenland, and eventually North America centuries before Columbus. Ingrid joins the family circle, her hair now properly braided and secured with carved bone pins that mark her unmarried status. She carries her embroidery work, a new apron she's been decorating with elaborate border patterns in red and gold thread. The needlework demonstrates not only her skill with textile arts but also her understanding of the symbolic language embedded in traditional designs. The patterns she's chosen include protective runes, fertility symbols, and geometric motifs that connect human craft to cosmic order. Archaeological finds from across the Viking world reveal the extraordinary sophistication of Norse textile work. Women like Ingrid created fabrics and clothing that rivaled the finest products of medieval Europe, using techniques like tablet weaving, silk embroidery, and complex dye processes that produced brilliant, long-lasting colors. These skills represented both practical necessity and artistic expression, allowing women to demonstrate their creativity while producing essential household goods. As the family gathers around the hearth for breakfast, little Sigrid finally wakes, attracted by the voices and activity around the fire. She climbs down from her sleeping platform still wrapped in her small woolen blanket, rubbing her eyes and yawning as she seeks the comfort of her mother's embrace. Astrid welcomes her youngest daughter with gentle hands, smoothing the child's tangled hair and murmuring the soft words of affection that strengthen family bonds. The breakfast porridge is ready, thick and fragrant with its precious additions. Astrid serves it in wooden bowls carved from birch burls, each one polished smooth by years of use and marked with the family's identifying runes. These bowls, like most household objects in the Viking world, represent the intersection of utility and beauty, functional items elevated to art through careful craftsmanship and proud ownership. With breakfast finished and the household fully awakened to the day's possibilities, Bjorn and young Olaf prepare to venture forth to the fields where essential work awaits. The transition from domestic comfort to outdoor labor represents one of the fundamental rhythms of Viking life, the constant cycle between sheltered family time and the demanding but rewarding engagement with the natural world that provides sustenance and meaning. Bjorn gathers his tools from their carefully maintained storage area near the longhouse entrance. Each implement represents specialized knowledge passed down through generations of farmers who understood that survival depended on having the right tool for every task and maintaining that tool in perfect working condition. His primary spade, crafted from seasoned ash wood with an iron blade forged by Gunnar 3 summers ago, shows the smooth wear patterns that come from thousands of hours of careful use. The handle, shaped to fit Bjorn's hands perfectly, has developed the deep patina that wooden tools acquire when treated with respect and regular oiling. Archaeological evidence from sites like Hedeby and Jorvik reveals the sophisticated tool technology available to Viking-age farmers and craftsmen. Iron tools were precious but not rare, and most households possessed comprehensive sets of specialized implements for different types of work. The quality of metalworking found in preserved Viking-age tools rivals anything produced in medieval Europe, demonstrating the high level of technological sophistication achieved by Norse smiths and the discerning standards of their customers. Olaf retrieves his own smaller tools, a wooden training spade, a sharp knife for cutting twine and marking wood, and a leather bag for collecting useful stones and interesting objects encountered during the day's work. At 8, he's considered old enough to contribute meaningfully to family labor while continuing his education in the practical skills that will define his adult life. His eager participation in grown-up work represents both childhood's natural desire to emulate admired adults and a cultural expectation that all family members contribute according to their abilities. Father and son set out across the settlement toward their family's allocated fields, following paths worn into the landscape by countless previous journeys. The morning air carries the fresh sense of dew-dampened earth and growing plants, while bird songs from the surrounding forests create a natural soundtrack for their peaceful progress. Other settlement members are beginning their own daily routines. Smoke rises from Gunnar's forge as he prepares for a day of metalwork, while voices from Helga's household suggest preparations for some special event. The field that awaits their attention stretches along a natural terrace above the river, where generations of careful cultivation have created rich soil ideal for growing the barley and oats that form the foundation of the settlement's food security. This particular plot has been in Bjorn's family for over 70 years, inherited from his grandfather and improved through decades of patient labor. The stone walls that border the field represent countless hours of work by multiple generations, each rock carefully selected and positioned to create barriers that will last for centuries. Today's task involves repairing a section of wall damaged by the previous winter's freeze-and-thaw cycles. Norse farmers understood that maintaining field boundaries was essential not just for marking property lines but for protecting crops from wandering livestock and providing windbreaks that could mean the difference between successful harvests and devastating crop failures. The work required both physical strength and aesthetic sense. A properly built stone wall possessed a beauty that came from understanding the natural logic of stone placement and the visual harmony created by skilled craftsmanship. Bjorn begins by teaching Olaf to evaluate stones for their suitability in wall construction. Each stone has its proper place, he explains, his voice carrying the patience that comes from years of teaching essential skills. Look for flat surfaces that will sit well together, and avoid stones with cracks that will split in winter frost. A wall built with care will outlast the men who build it. This instruction represents one of countless lessons in practical wisdom that Viking children absorbed through participation in adult work. Rather than formal schooling separated from productive activity, Norse education happened through hands-on involvement in essential tasks, creating deep understanding of natural processes and traditional techniques that served individuals and communities for entire lifetimes. As they worked together, selecting and placing stones with careful attention to fit and stability, Olaf demonstrates the quick learning ability and physical coordination that promise well for his future. His small hands prove surprisingly adept at finding stones that complement his father's larger selections, while his young back shows no strain from the lifting and carrying that challenges older workers. Most importantly, he shows the patience necessary for work that requires precision rather than speed, a crucial trait for success in any traditional craft. The methodical nature of stone wall construction creates opportunities for conversation and instruction that strengthen the bond between father and son while transmitting cultural knowledge. Bjorn shares stories about the field's history, pointing out sections of wall built by his grandfather and explaining the reasoning behind certain construction choices. He describes the seasonal cycles that govern farming in their northern climate, helping Olaf understand the larger patterns that give meaning to specific tasks. Archaeological studies of Viking-age agricultural systems reveal the sophisticated understanding of environmental conditions and crop management that allowed Norse farmers to thrive in challenging climates. The field boundaries, drainage systems, and crop rotation practices evidenced in preserved farming landscapes demonstrate centuries of accumulated knowledge about maximizing productivity while maintaining soil fertility across generations of continuous cultivation. As the morning progresses and their work creates visible improvement in the wall's integrity, neighbors occasionally pass by, some pausing to exchange greetings and share information about community activities. Gunnar stops on his way to check a section of forest where he hopes to find suitable charcoal-making wood, sharing news that traders are expected to arrive within the next few days with goods from as far away as the Baltic Amber Coast and the fur markets of northern Sweden. These casual encounters represent the information networks that kept Viking-age communities connected to wider economic and social systems. News traveled along established routes through personal relationships and commercial contacts, creating awareness of opportunities and dangers that might affect local decisions. A successful farmer like Bjorn needed to understand market conditions, weather patterns, and political developments across a region stretching hundreds of miles in all directions. Eric the blacksmith's son appears with his morning milk delivery, driving the family's small herd of goats along the path between fields and pastures. The sight of the healthy animals and Eric's competent handling of his responsibilities draws approving comments from both Bjorn and visiting neighbors. At 16, Eric has reached the age where his performance of adult tasks reflects on his family's reputation and his own prospects for marriage and advancement within the community. The goats themselves represent careful breeding and management decisions that maximize their value as sources of milk, meat, and hides. Viking-age animal husbandry was remarkably sophisticated, with selective breeding programs that produced livestock well adapted to northern conditions while providing optimal yields of essential products. Archaeological analysis of preserved animal bones reveals the results of centuries of genetic selection for traits like cold hardiness, disease resistance, and productivity. As the sun climbs higher and the day grows warmer, Bjorn and Olaf pause in their work to rest in the shade of an ancient oak tree that marks the boundary between their field and the common pasture. The massive tree, easily 4 centuries old, has witnessed the entire history of the settlement and serves as a living monument to the continuity between past and present. Such trees held special significance in Norse culture, often associated with Thor's protection and considered sacred spaces where important decisions might be made or oaths sworn. As midday approaches and the sun reaches its highest point in a clear northern sky, Astrid and Ingrid arrive at the field carrying a wicker basket filled with the day's substantial meal. The sight of his wife and daughter approaching across the green landscape brings a smile to Bjorn's weathered features, representing the perfect harmony between productive work and family care that defines the ideal Viking household. The meal they bring reflects both practical necessity and the abundance that comes from successful farming and careful resource management. Fresh bread, baked before dawn in the outdoor stone oven that serves several neighboring households, forms the foundation of the meal. This bread, darker and denser than modern varieties, is made from a mixture of barley, oats, and carefully ground pea flour that provides complete nutrition while demonstrating the family's prosperity through its generous size and rich ingredients. Accompanying the bread is a selection of foods that showcase the diversity available to successful Viking families during the abundant summer months. Fresh butter, churned just yesterday from their cow's rich milk, provides concentrated calories and the satisfying richness that sustains heavy physical labor. Soft cheese, aged in the cool underground storage cellar attached to their longhouse, offers protein and calcium essential for maintaining strong bones and muscles. Sliced vegetables from Astrid's carefully tended garden, crisp radishes, sweet young turnips, and tender cabbage leaves, add fresh flavors and vital nutrients often lacking in preserved winter foods. Most precious of all is the honeycomb that Astrid has brought, traded just last week from a beekeeper whose hives benefit from the diverse wildflowers that bloom in forest clearings throughout the valley. Honey represents the ultimate luxury in a world without refined sugar, providing intense sweetness while demonstrating the trade connections that link their small settlement to specialized producers across the region. The golden liquid catches sunlight like liquid amber, promising flavors that will linger in memory long after the meal is finished. The family settles beneath the ancient oak's spreading branches, finding comfortable positions on woolen cloaks spread over the soft grass. This tree has sheltered countless such family meals across the decades of the settlement's existence, its massive trunk and broad canopy providing a natural gathering place that connects human activity to the eternal rhythms of the natural world. Archaeological evidence from across Scandinavia suggests that such trees often became focal points for community activities, serving as landmarks, meeting places, and sites for seasonal celebrations. As they share their meal, the conversation flows naturally between immediate concerns and broader topics that illuminate the complexity of Viking Age life. Astrid shares news from her morning visit with Helga, the settlement's most respected matron, who has been organizing preparations for the harvest festival that will mark summer's end. This annual celebration represents both thanksgiving for successful crops and anticipation of winter's challenges, bringing together the entire community for feasting, storytelling, and the ritual activities that strengthen social bonds. The festival preparations reveal the sophisticated social organization that characterizes successful Viking communities. Different families take responsibility for specific contributions. Some will provide grain for brewing the ale essential to proper celebration, others will contribute meat from carefully preserved livestock, while households known for particular skills will offer entertainment through music, storytelling, or displays of craftsmanship. This cooperative approach ensures that everyone participates according to their abilities while creating events that strengthen community identity and provide models for future generations. Ingrid contributes her own news about recent developments among the settlement's young people, describing the budding romance between Astrid's niece and a visiting trader's son who has impressed everyone with his knowledge of distant markets and foreign customs. Such relationships often begin during seasonal festivals or trading gatherings, when young people from different communities have opportunities to meet and evaluate potential marriage partners. Viking marriage customs emphasized compatibility of families and economic circumstances rather than purely romantic attraction, though personal preference certainly played important roles in successful matches. The discussion of marriage possibilities leads naturally to consideration of Ingrid's own future, a topic approached with the delicate balance of parental concern and respect for their daughter's emerging independence. At 15, Ingrid has reached marriageable age, though her parents show no urgency to arrange a match. Viking families generally allowed daughters considerable input into marriage decisions, recognizing that successful households require genuine cooperation between spouses rather than mere economic arrangements imposed by parental authority. Young Olaf listens to these adult conversations with the intense attention that characterizes intelligent children absorbing cultural knowledge. Though still years away from such concerns, he's already learning the complex social dynamics that will shape his own future choices about marriage, career, and community involvement. Viking children enjoyed remarkable freedom to observe and participate in adult activities, gaining sophisticated understanding of social expectations and cultural values through daily exposure to mature decision-making processes. As the meal progresses, visitors begin arriving to share news and seek Bjorn's advice on various matters. Gunnar appears first, wiping sweat from his brow after a morning spent working the bellows at his forge. He brings word that the iron ore shipment expected from the mountain regions has been delayed by flooding in the high passes, requiring adjustments to his production schedule and affecting several families who had commissioned new tools for harvest work. This news illustrates the interconnected nature of Viking Age economies, where disruptions in one sector could affect entire communities. Iron production required coordination between miners, transporters, fuel suppliers, and smiths, creating supply chains that stretched across hundreds of miles and involved dozens of specialized workers. Successful communities like Bjorn's settlement depended on maintaining reliable relationships with these distant partners while developing local alternatives that provided security against supply disruptions. Following Gunnar comes Thorstein the boat builder, seeking advice about timber selection for a new fishing vessel commissioned by 3 families planning to expand their maritime activities. The discussion that follows reveals the sophisticated knowledge required for successful boat construction in the Viking world, where vessels needed to perform reliably in conditions ranging from calm fjord waters to the violent storms of the open North Sea. Bjorn's expertise in these matters comes from years of experience with his own fishing and trading vessels, knowledge that makes him a valued consultant for other community members planning maritime ventures. The conversation covers topics like wood selection, seasoning requirements, joint construction techniques, and the critical measurements that determine a vessel's sailing characteristics. Archaeological studies of preserved Viking ships reveal the extraordinary sophistication of Norse naval architecture, with design features that wouldn't be rediscovered by other European shipbuilders for centuries. The informal consultation session that develops under the oak tree demonstrates the collaborative problem-solving approach that characterizes successful Viking communities. Rather than hoarding knowledge or charging fees for advice, experienced community members freely share their expertise while benefiting from the collective wisdom that emerges when multiple perspectives address common challenges. This cooperative approach to technological development helps explain the rapid innovations that allowed Viking-age Scandinavians to excel in fields ranging from shipbuilding and metalworking to farming and textile production. As the sun begins its slow descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of amber and rose, Bjorn and his family make their way back to the settlement through fields glowing with the golden light that photographers would later call the magic hour. The day's productive work has left them with the deep satisfaction that comes from meaningful labor completed well, while the approaching evening promises the different pleasures of family time, community connection, and the peaceful restoration that prepares body and spirit for tomorrow's challenges. The longhouse welcomes them with the comforting familiarity of home, thick walls that shut out the cooling air, the warm glow of oil lamps that push back gathering shadows, and the rich aromas of the evening meal that Astrid began preparing before joining them in the fields. The central hearth crackles with fresh logs that will burn steadily through the night, providing warmth and the psychological comfort that comes from humanity's oldest technology. Magnus, Bjorn's elderly father, sits in his favorite position near the fire, working on a piece of intricate wood carving that will eventually become a decorative panel for the settlement's small wooden church. At 72 winters old, Magnus has earned the respect that comes from a lifetime of wise decisions and generous service to his community, while his skilled hands continue producing the beautiful objects that demonstrate mastery achieved through decades of patient practice. The carving taking shape under Magnus' careful knife depicts scenes from the life of Saint Olav, Norway's patron saint, whose story perfectly embodies the cultural transformation that has gradually brought Christian beliefs into harmony with older Norse traditions. The old man works with the confident precision that comes from a lifetime of craftsmanship, his gnarled fingers still steady enough for detail work that would challenge much younger artisans. "How goes the wall, my son?" Magnus asks without looking up from his carving, his voice carrying the warm interest that has always characterized his relationship with his children and grandchildren. Though age has slowed his body, his mind remains sharp and engaged with all aspects of family and community life. Bjorn settles onto a wooden stool beside his father, accepting a cup of ale from Astrid while describing the day's progress on the stone wall repair. The conversation flows naturally between practical details and broader observations about farming, weather patterns, and the seasonal cycles that govern all aspects of their lives. Magnus listens with the careful attention that comes from understanding how present decisions will affect future generations, occasionally offering suggestions based on his decades of experience with similar challenges. These intergenerational conversations represent one of the most important mechanisms for transmitting practical knowledge and cultural values in Viking society. Rather than formal schools or written instruction manuals, Norse communities relied on the patient sharing of experience between older and younger family members, creating deep understanding of traditional techniques while allowing for gradual innovation and adaptation to changing conditions. Young Olaf settles at his grandfather's feet, fascinated by the emerging details of the carved saints' robes and the tiny runic inscriptions that Magnus incorporates into the decorative borders. The boy's questions about technique and symbolism create teaching opportunities that strengthen family bonds while ensuring that essential skills pass to the next generation. Archaeological evidence from sites across Scandinavia reveals the extraordinary sophistication of Viking-age wood carving, with surviving examples showing mastery that rivals the finest medieval European artwork. Ingrid takes her place at her mother's side, helping to prepare the evening meal while continuing work on her embroidered apron. Her nimble fingers manage both tasks simultaneously, demonstrating the multitasking abilities that were essential for successful household management in a world where efficiency meant survival. The patterns she stitches incorporate both Christian symbols and older protective designs, reflecting the cultural synthesis that characterizes their transitional historical period. As Astrid tends the cooking pot suspended over the central fire, the rich aromas of mutton stew fill the longhouse with promise of the satisfying meal to come. The meat comes from one of their own sheep, slaughtered earlier in the season and preserved in the cool underground storage chamber that maintains consistent temperatures year-round. Root vegetables from their garden add substance and nutrition, while herbs grown in Astrid's carefully tended plots provide the complex flavors that transform simple ingredients into memorable meals. The cooking process itself demonstrates the sophisticated food preparation techniques available to prosperous Viking families. The iron pot, suspended on an adjustable chain that allows precise heat control, maintains the slow simmer necessary for transforming tough meat into tender perfection. Clay storage jars along the walls contain preserved foods, dried herbs, and the precious salt that was essential for food preservation in an age before refrigeration. While the stew cooks, family members engage in the productive activities that make evening hours both pleasant and profitable. Bjorn works on maintenance tasks essential for keeping their household running smoothly, sharpening knives on his whetstones, treating leather goods with sheep's fat to maintain flexibility, and checking the condition of ropes and wooden tools that might need replacement or repair before winter arrives. These seemingly simple maintenance tasks require considerable skill and knowledge passed down through generations of practical experience. A properly sharpened knife could mean the difference between efficient work and dangerous accidents, while well-maintained leather goods provided protection and durability that saved both money and time. Viking households operated on principles of self-sufficiency that required every adult member to master multiple crafts and technologies. Astrid divides her attention between cooking and the complex textile work that provided both essential clothing and valuable trade goods. At her side sits a spinning wheel, a relatively new technology that has revolutionized thread production and allowed women to create finer, more consistent fibers for weaving. The wheel itself represents the kind of technological advancement that gradually improved living standards throughout the medieval period, though most families still relied on traditional drop spindles for much of their fiber production. The wool she spins comes from their own sheep, animals carefully bred for fiber quality as well as meat production. The natural colors range from white through various shades of brown and gray, while selected fleeces have been dyed using local plants and imported materials that produce brilliant reds, blues, and yellows. Archaeological analysis of preserved Viking-age textiles reveals the sophisticated understanding of fiber arts that allowed Norse women to create fabrics rivaling the finest medieval European productions. As the evening progresses and the stew reaches perfect tenderness, other members of Bjorn's extended household begin gathering around the central hearth. His unmarried brothers Thorvald and Gunther return from their day's activities, Thorvald from checking his fishing nets in the fjord, Gunther from helping with harvest preparations at a neighboring farm. Both men contribute their earnings and labor to the household economy while enjoying the security and social connection that comes from remaining within the family structure rather than establishing independent households. This extended family arrangement was common in Viking society, particularly for younger sons who might not inherit sufficient land to support independent families. Rather than creating conflict, These arrangements typically strengthen family units by providing additional labor and resources while maintaining strong kinship bonds across generations. Archaeological evidence from longhouse excavations shows that many Viking households included multiple nuclear families related through blood or marriage. The household servants, a young man named Einar whose family fell on hard times after a series of crop failures, and an older woman named Ragnhild whose husband died in a trading accident, take their places at the family table as valued members of the household rather than mere workers. Viking society generally treated household servants well, recognizing their essential contributions while providing them with security and opportunities for advancement that might eventually lead to independent status. As the family gathers for their evening meal, little Sigrid emerges from her afternoon nap refreshed and ready to participate in the social activities that make evening hours special. At 5 years old, she's beginning to show the quick intelligence and artistic sensitivity that suggests she'll excel in the textile arts like her mother and sister. Her childish chatter adds lightness to adult conversations while her innocent questions often lead to discussions that strengthen family bonds. The evening meal itself represents both nutritional necessity and social ritual that reinforces family identity and cultural values. The wooden bowls and spoons, each carved and decorated according to traditional patterns, connect the family to generations of ancestors while proclaiming their continuity with cultural traditions. The ale served in decorated horn cups adds ceremonial significance to the simple act of sharing food, while the careful attention to proper serving order reflects the social hierarchies that maintain household harmony. Archaeological evidence from preserved Viking-age feasting halls reveals the importance of communal meals in maintaining social cohesion and cultural identity. Even simple family dinners incorporated elements of the elaborate feasts that marked important occasions, creating daily reinforcement of the values and relationships that held communities together across the challenges of medieval life. As full darkness settles over the Norwegian fjord like a gentle blanket, the longhouse becomes a cocoon of warmth and security against the vast wildness of the northern night. Outside, wolves may howl in distant forests and unknown ships might pass like shadows on the dark water, but within these thick timber walls, the ancient rhythms of family life continue their eternal dance between work and rest, story and silence, connection and solitude. The oil lamps cast dancing shadows on the carved wooden posts that support the longhouse roof, their flickering light revealing the intricate decorative work that transforms functional architecture into art. These posts, carved by Magnus in his younger years, depict the intertwined branches of Yggdrasil, the world tree of Norse mythology, whose roots and branches connect all the realms of existence. Even as Christian beliefs gradually influence their spiritual understanding, the old symbols retain their power to inspire and comfort, representing continuities that stretch back beyond memory into the misty origins of their people. Bjorn sits beside the central hearth, working by firelight on a piece of practical artistry that will serve his family for generations. In his weathered hands takes shape a new wooden bucket, carved from a single piece of seasoned birch and reinforced with iron hoops forged by Gunnar according to specifications passed down through centuries of practical experience. Each cut of his knife reflects decisions based on understanding wood grain, stress patterns, and the subtle engineering principles that create objects both beautiful and functional. The rhythmic sound of his carving knife creates a gentle counterpoint to Astrid's quiet humming as she works at her loom, weaving the woolen fabric that will become winter cloaks for the children. Her song, wordless but rich with melody, carries echoes of the ancient working songs that have helped Norse women maintain rhythm and focus during long hours of essential labor. These traditional melodies, passed from mother to daughter across countless generations, create invisible threads connecting present workers to the accumulated wisdom and endurance of ancestral mothers. Young Olaf has claimed his favorite position curled against his grandfather's side, listening with rapt attention as Magnus tells stories that blend history, mythology, and moral instruction into narratives that will shape the boy's understanding of his place in the world. Tonight's tale concerns Harald Fairhair, the legendary king who united Norway through a combination of military prowess, political wisdom, and the ability to inspire loyalty among diverse tribal groups. The story serves multiple purposes: entertainment, historical education, and guidance about the qualities that create effective leadership. Archaeological evidence and written sources like Snorri Sturluson's Heimskringla suggest that such storytelling sessions played crucial roles in transmitting cultural knowledge before widespread literacy made written records available to common families. The skalds who preserved these stories developed remarkable abilities to memorize complex narratives while adapting them to different audiences and occasions, creating a living tradition that kept history, values, and entertainment intertwined. Ingrid sits nearby, her embroidery work nearly completed in the gentle lamplight. The intricate patterns she's created over many evening sessions demonstrate not only her technical skill but also her deep understanding of the symbolic language embedded in traditional Norse decorative arts. The intertwined animals, geometric borders, and protective runes she's stitched will provide both beauty and spiritual protection for the wearer, reflecting beliefs that connect human craftsmanship to divine power. As the fire burns lower and the evening progresses toward sleep, the family's activities gradually shift from productive work to the gentler pursuits that prepare mind and body for rest. Magnus sets aside his carving tools and begins the slow, careful process of banking the central fire to maintain warmth through the night while conserving precious fuel. This nightly ritual requires considerable skill. Too little air and the fire dies completely, too much and valuable wood burns away uselessly during the sleeping hours. Astrid completes her weaving for the evening and begins preparing the household for sleep, checking that oil lamps are positioned safely and that the children have everything they need for comfortable rest. Her movements around the longhouse reflect the countless small acts of care that maintain family security and comfort, actions so routine they've become unconscious but so essential that their absence would quickly create hardship and distress. Little Sigrid has grown drowsy in the warm, secure atmosphere, her small body beginning to show the complete relaxation that comes when children feel utterly safe and loved. Astrid lifts her youngest daughter gently, carrying her to the sleeping platform where soft furs and woolen blankets create a nest of comfort that will ensure peaceful dreams throughout the night. The process of settling the household for sleep follows patterns established across generations of family life, each action part of a ritual that creates security through predictability and routine. Wooden shutters close over the small windows, reducing heat loss while maintaining enough air circulation to prevent stuffiness. Valuable objects are secured in their proper storage places, protecting them from accidental damage while ensuring they'll be ready for tomorrow's use. As family members take their places on the raised sleeping platforms that line the longhouse walls, the conversations gradually quiet to whispers and then to the comfortable silence that precedes sleep. The thick woolen blankets and warm furs provide insulation against the cooling air, while the slowly dying fire continues to radiate heat that will maintain comfort until morning brings time to rebuild the flames. Bjorn lies beside Astrid, listening to her steady breathing and feeling the gentle movement of their unborn child within her womb. These quiet moments of connection represent some of life's deepest pleasures, the simple miracle of shared existence, the promise of continuing generations, the peace that comes from knowing one's place in the larger patterns of family and community that give meaning to individual existence. Outside the longhouse, the northern night spreads its ancient magic across the landscape. Stars shine with brilliant clarity in air unpolluted by artificial light, their familiar patterns providing navigation guides for travelers while inspiring the mythological stories that explain their origins and significance. The aurora borealis begins its ethereal dance across the sky, painting the darkness with curtains of green and gold light that seem to connect earth and heaven through bridges of pure beauty. These natural wonders, visible to every clear night in their northern homeland, inspired the rich mythological traditions that gave Norse culture its distinctive character. The aurora was Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that connected Midgard to Asgard, allowing communication between humans and gods. The constellations were eternal reminders of heroic deeds and divine powers, while the movements of moon and planets provided the calendrical knowledge essential for agricultural success. In neighboring longhouses, other families follow similar routines of evening work and gradual preparation for sleep, creating a community rhythm that connects individual households to the larger social organism of the settlement. Security comes not just from thick walls and barred doors but from the knowledge that neighbors remain alert and ready to respond to any threat or emergency that might disturb the night's peace. The sounds of settling. Quiet conversations, the rustle of blankets, the soft footsteps of late evening tasks, gradually fade into the deeper quiet of night. Dogs that guard the settlement's perimeter settle into their watchful rest, alert to unusual sounds while comfortable with the familiar noises of a peaceful community preparing for sleep. Cats that earn their keep controlling mice and rats begin their silent nocturnal hunts, disappearing into shadows with the fluid grace that made them valued partners in the constant battle against pests. As Bjorn drifts toward sleep, his mind reviews the day's accomplishments and tomorrow's possibilities with the satisfaction that comes from a life lived in harmony with natural rhythms and community expectations. The stone wall stands stronger, his son has learned valuable lessons, his family enjoys health and prosperity, and the larger community continues its successful adaptation to the challenges and opportunities of their northern homeland. In his dreams, Bjorn sails again on the whale road, feeling the spray of North Sea waves and the tug of wind-filled sails as his ship carries him toward distant shores rich with trading opportunities and new adventures. These dreams reflect the deep cultural connection that even farming Vikings maintained with the sea and the wider world it made accessible, reminding him that security and adventure, rootedness and exploration, represent complementary rather than contradictory aspects of the Norse experience. The night deepens around the sleeping household, wrapping them in the profound peace that comes from lives lived according to patterns established by countless generations of ancestors. Tomorrow will bring its own tasks and pleasures, challenges and rewards, but tonight offers the perfect rest that prepares body and spirit for whatever the future may hold. Let this ancient peace settle over you now, dear traveler. Feel the security of thick walls and warm fires, the comfort of family bonds and community connections, the deep satisfaction that comes from meaningful work completed with skill and dedication. Rest as Vikings have rested for over 1,000 years, under the same stars, warmed by the same essential human love that sustains us all across the centuries.